Everybody. Ready?
But why would it have that reflected?
When did that change take place?
Hope.
Hello, everyone. This is Sally, and welcome to the webinar this week. Kyle and I are actually on the road. We've been to Oxford to a meeting about connectivity and resiliency during times of disasters and lessons learned during Winter Storm Fern. So that was very interesting. Today we are going to talk about several different things. I thought I would give you all an update. I wish I had more of an update. We're still waiting on NIST approval. Again, I just don't know when that's going to be. We keep expecting it and being promised it will be here shortly, and we still don't have it. But in the meantime, we have gone ahead and worked on our grant agreements. A couple of y'all had some changes and sent those in to us on Friday. So we're looking at that and seeing if that is something we can accommodate or not. We'll be in touch with you. We did also get some new FAQs from NTIA regarding our grant agreements, and there was some specific language that NTIA wants to make sure is not included in our grant agreement, specifically about rate regulation. I know most of you providers don't want any semblance of that, so we're going to look through and make sure that our language is in compliance with the latest FAQs from NTIA. So we will be doing that this week. But what we wanted to do today is walk you through how those grant agreements will be signed. As you know, there is a lot of information that will be included as far as locations, the grant award, the match. So a lot of information, and we're going to do that all through the portal. So all of that, you will have some things to enter. We will have some things to enter when we get ready to do these grant agreements. And if we have Logan on here, we're going to let Logan walk us through this. Logan, are you here?
Absolutely. Hey, Sally. Thanks for teeing that up for me.
Sure.
Give me just a second. I'm gonna prep one document real quick, and then we should be good to go.
Logan, while you're getting that pulled up, if y'all don't mind, me just kind of prefacing this demo that he's about to do. I know you guys are very familiar with what we've been calling reporting projects when we gave each of you the opportunity to break down your deployment level projects into kind of the phases that you'd like to be reimbursed at from a milestone schedule standpoint. And so when we do this walkthrough through the portal with Logan here, each of the reporting projects that you've provided to us in that breakout are going to be reflected in what's called a project plan. And so that's kind of the level of information that we're going to review and make sure that everything is aligning with the final proposal, because all of the project plans or reporting projects will be reflected in the grant agreement kind of in an appendix at the end. So they will be individually kind of submitted and reviewed through the portal. So just wanted y'all to have a little bit of clarity on the vernacular before we dive into things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so can you all see my screen?
We can.
Cool. So the idea behind this is that the project plan is going to work as a overview of the plan from your first principles of the plan. So it doesn't mean that this has to be what it is perfectly, but it does mean that we want to get a really good idea of where we are going, both in terms of budget, in terms of timeline, and in terms of activities and permitting. So when you log into your portal, you're going to see this BEAD reporting node over to the left, and you're going to see project plans here. So if you click into project plans, you'll then get a list of all of your reporting projects. So what I'm going to do is click into this one. And the first thing you're going to see is an overview tab. So it'll show grant amount, match funds, total costs, BSL locations, along with any counties, towns, or cities that are a part of that project. For context here, and this is pretty important, is just this is a test environment. We didn't want to go in with real data, so this isn't going to be 100% what it looks like, but it's going to be 95% of the way there. So this is going to be mostly what you'll see, and it'll help you get a gist for how you use this and how you go forward. Any questions on overview or project plan as a whole? Cool. All right, I'm going to move over to the activities bucket. And so this is where you're going to first kind of start. So your activities are just going to be the milestones in Mississippi. So there will not be this many. It'll only be the milestones that we have set up. So you can either go in and manually fill in these milestones. So start date, end date, and then any notes, and hit save, and that'll fill it in. Or you can download a template, and that template looks like this. Want to make sure everyone can see this template. Is it good? I'll zoom in a
Yeah,
bit.
we can.
Cool. So all this is going to be is the activity or milestone over on column A, start date and end date. And then of course notes. So the idea behind this is just getting an idea for the overall timeline of the project. And the further we get into it, we know that things will change, but this is going to be the original plan and help everyone understand exactly what the idea for the project is going to be. Once that's done, you can upload the filled template. It'll fill out this project start date. That's going to be the earliest date that you put in, and the project end date. That's going to be the most recent date or the latest date that you put in. And then it'll have a project duration here. Finally, if you scroll to the bottom, it'll create a Gantt chart for all of your milestones, just to visualize the timeline created here. Any questions on activities? Cool. Next is budget breakdown. This is where things kind of start to rhyme a little bit. You'll also have a downloadable template and the ability to enter cost items manually. So I'm going to start off by entering a cost item manually. So we'll say it's a project inspection fee, call it example cost. We'll say XYZ here. We'll put this as $1 million in grants. Is that right? Yes. And then we'll put $1 million in match as well. Call it a $2 million cost. Hit save, and you'll see how this allocated number goes up. This match allocated number goes up, and these two grant numbers go down. Importantly here, you will not be able to submit, so you won't get the green check mark on budget breakdown until the entirety of this amount is used. Yeah, Tiffany.
Hi there. I just had a question regarding the templates on that previous page. Will we have an opportunity to have access to what those are going to require, what those are going to look like before execution?
Yeah. It's just the milestone name, start date, and date. But I can get a sample over to Lindsay of this right here, with the Mississippi milestones in it. So y'all can kind of go ahead and get started on those.
That would be
If that
great.
works
Thank you
for
so much. Yeah, that'd be
you
great.
and Horn.
I appreciate it.
Cool. I'm gonna back out of that. I'm gonna say it again just because it's important. If you do not use 100% of both your grant and match funds, or if 100% of both your grant and match funds aren't allocated for in this cost items section, this will not be able to submit. So if I go over to the template, this is the template that you get when you hit that download template button. As you can see, I've kind of already pre-filled this a bit. Item 1, item 2, item 3, all in different categories with their descriptions. Total cost, which is not an editable field. That's just gonna sum these two fields. grant funds requested and match funds requested. Now, importantly, on this one, if I were to put $1 here, oh, it works just fine. But what it should do and what it will do by the time it gets to y'all is that if we go over this amount, then you're not going to be able to submit the Excel either. So it'll throw an error. So let me actually just say that this is this, and this is the message you get. So budget exceeded. The sum of grant funds cannot exceed the grant funds unallocated amount for your project. And the same will go for applicant match. So this is the template. We can also get this to y'all, but the important thing that here is that this would be a sample template. And because everything is going to be specific to your project and your project amounts, the actual ability to go ahead and edit the sheet won't work if we send it to you early. So we can send you a sample, but you won't be able to upload it.
Lindsay, real quick, can you explain, just, I'm sure it's repetitive, to the group, the purpose of filling this out and why it, I mean, it's not the same as the milestones that are going to be paid out, but why are we having them fill this out?
Yeah, absolutely. So for NTIA purposes, we do have to report on their budget categories that they have on a semi-annual basis. So this is just going to be able to show kind of, costs that are planned, expected budgets, and then kind of tying that back on a regular kind of review basis for semi-annual reports to see what's been expended against what the budget is. So that's what this purpose is for, is just for kind of reporting, kind of tracking throughout the rest of the program, how things are being spent.
Cool. Thanks, Lindsay. So the next section is going to be permitting. This is also a downloadable template. This one is not filled, and it's going to take us a little second for me to fill it. So I'm going to show you the template itself, as opposed to how it would actually show up in the portal. But and the Mississippi one will be a bit shorter than this one, but this is again a demo environment. So you would include your permit category from one of these, description, permit name, governing entity type, etc., and renewal expected. The idea for this is not to be 100% perfect, but it's kind of to start us understanding what kind of permitting will be needed to complete a specific project. So when we go through this permitting section, again, it really does not have to be perfect, but we want to have a good understanding of thinking about permits and what they're going to look like on a project level. Lisa, just a second. I'm reading your comment.
Yeah, Lisa, so y'all did submit some budgets within the application process. There was lots of kind of curing, adding, dropping locations in most of these projects throughout kind of the curing phase. And so even though we know that your total costs are the ones submitted and approved with the final proposal for the project, and then the subaward amounts for the BEAD fund portion of it, that is what we have to tie to, but you will have this opportunity now to kind of re-break out those new final numbers into the budget for each of these reporting projects. So even at a smaller level, because even before they were kind of at a different project area unit kind of phase. So this is going to be even more finalized for reporting projects as long as they kind of consolidate up to that deployment project.
That was perfect. Thank you, Lindsay. Cool. So our permitting is there. I'm going to move forward to network design. Again, this is going to be slightly different, but it's just uploading files, uploading the shape files needed. Something I think we've all kind of done at this point. Going to go to additional information again. If there's going to be an additional information section, this is what it will be. For example, estimated total aerial miles. If it changed, you can put something in there. If not, you don't have to. If I go ahead and hit next, last piece certification, and then you can review the entire project plan that you just created and go ahead and submit. Any questions on the overall project plan? Cool. All right, got one more demo for y'all. And it is going to be through subgrant agreement, and it should go pretty quick. So I'm gonna log in as Southern Arkansas Broadband. I'm gonna go ahead and click on my subgrant agreement. You'll see the same project summary that you saw in the project plan. I'm gonna go ahead and go to the next section, sign subgrant agreement. As you can see, I'm not the authorized organizational representative for Southern Arkansas, so I cannot sign the subgrant agreement. But I can go in and look at it, and I can show y'all that if you were the authorized organizational representative for your organization, you can go in, edit this field for example. You can read through the subgrant agreement here, and if I scroll to the bottom, I can go ahead and sign, scroll, and hit the submit button. Once I've signed all of these fields, the submit button turns blue. So trying to keep the flow really, really simple for y'all. But any questions there? There's also an ability to download here, and there is also an ability to export and download the project plans as well. All right, that is all I had for y'all today. So I'll kick it back over to Lindsay.
Yeah, thank you, Logan. Lisa, just to go back to your question real quick, if I wasn't totally clear before. So when you guys broke out to the reporting project level, that will be your opportunity to give a budget for that specific reporting project, which we don't already have on file. So yes, it would be different than your applications as long as they tie to the total deployment project. I know we did like a demo of the portal, but any kind of overarching questions before we move on to a couple other kind of next step topics regarding kind of why we're doing this, how we're doing it, what you guys need to do, or anything like that. I will say most of the information will be kind of pre-populated for you based on what you provided back to the BEAM office in the reporting project phase. Just ensure that everything is tying appropriately. And then there will be a final review process on our end once you guys submit your project plans, just to make sure that everything is good to go. And then that will release the subgrant agreement portion of the portal that Logan just showed to be able to actually do that execution within platform. Angel, anything we missed in that regard before we move on to a couple other topics? Oh, I see one question. So Kyle, I see your question regarding the network design requirement. We will get you guys some resources in consultation with the engineering firms working with the BEAM office of what those files need to look at. Again, they're not the final version of anything. You will actually have a very streamlined NEPA process within platform that the engineers will be doing a presentation on in the coming weeks, and making sure you guys all have the specificities of what needs to happen there. So we'll definitely let you know and can include it in the portal as well of what type of files would be accepted and what those needs to look like.
For Tiffany's question, the portal will be open as soon as we finish constructing it. And of course, after we get our NIST approval, we expect that to be in the next coming weeks. Lisa, the due date for completion for this, I mean, the net result of finishing this would be generating your grant agreements. So I don't know that we necessarily have a firm deadline other than NTIA's guidance on when we have to have grant agreements signed, but we would anticipate you guys wanting to do this as quickly as possible once it's available.
Yeah, that's right. Kind of depending on when we do get that approval. But of course, once we do, we'll get that communicated to you guys as quick as possible. Any other questions on this phase? Happy to answer any you guys may have. Okay, so Tiffany, I see your question about monthly, semi-annual, and reporting being submitted through the portal. We are still kind of streamlining what our reporting processes are going to look like. The platform that Logan just showed will be used. Monthly reporting might be on a little bit more of an informal basis with some of the engineering firms that y'all are working with, that y'all have already had some calls with kickoff wise. So there might be some different templates and things, but we can have a whole separate webinar kind of talking specifically about the reporting requirements and the cadence of those, so that that can be really clear to you guys going forward. And y'all keep dropping them in the chat. I'm going to move forward, but it can always come back to Q&A at the end, even if we've moved on from a certain topic. So that is kind of course, the immediate next step that I know everybody is excited about, actually getting these agreements signed. So once that does happen, and we'll alert y'all of those times, wanted you guys to be aware of kind of the immediate next steps following that, and you know, anything that you are being held to from like a time constraint wise after executing. So the first thing that I wanted to mention is everybody, right when you get kicked off, everybody's going to be excited to start their NEPA process with their engineering consultants, because that's kind of the first gating criteria. Cannot put a shovel in the ground, start anything, incur costs for anything construction until you do have that NEPA approval and notice to proceed. And we'll have kind of a different call about NEPA specifically and what all that will entail. However, the one requirement that does have a bit of a time frame on it after you put ink to paper that I want you guys to be aware of is once you do execute your subaward agreement, you have 30 days to provide the BEAM office with a NEPA milestone schedule. And NTIA has put out some resources on this particular topic. We'll drop it in the chat for you. And again, have some additional training when that NEPA webinar does occur. But there is a sample in this file here for what that might look like. So just wanted you guys to be aware of that requirement that you are going to be held to, and 30 days is a pretty tight time frame. But if you go ahead and start looking at it now, you will hopefully have your brains wrapped around it a little bit more, and we can have time to kind of consult with you in the interim before we get to that phase. So that could probably go a little bit quicker. It's nothing crazy. It's pretty straightforward, just kind of wanting to see those milestones associated with the NEPA process, and that way kind of NTIA can be aware as well. So Jake, thank you for dropping that link down in the chat. If y'all want to give that a look, and the engineers, like I said, when we do our NEPA specific office hours /webinar, could go into this in a little bit more detail, either next week or the following, whenever they have that ready. So come prepared maybe with some questions after giving this document a look. Just wanted you guys to know that you do have 30 days after executing your subaward agreement to get this in, and it is a federal requirement for the program. So that is a true time frame that you are held to. Any questions regarding that particular requirement, maybe besides some of like the specifics that we'll have more of an in-depth presentation on in the future? Okay. If you do, feel free to drop them and we can talk about them, circle back. So that's kind of like the first thing, 30 days, that's your first kind of milestone of needing to have something submitted to the BEAM office. The next item I know everyone's going to be excited about is getting your first milestone reimbursement payment. And in the Mississippi milestone schedule for the BEAD program, that is subaward execution. So for that particular milestone, I wanted to walk you guys through what we need, timeframes associated with those in order to get you your payment. And then Logan will do another demo in the next few weeks, month or so, to actually show you guys how to utilize the reimbursement portion of the portal. If you're a CPF recipient, it's very similar, but just some small tweaks for the BEAD program, just so you guys know how to actually request for that milestone reimbursement. So in order to actually obtain and complete that milestone for payment, what we're going to need is, of course, the executed subaward agreement itself, duly executed on both ends. So we will have to have that. And then we're also requesting that you do have, for that before you execute your subaward agreement, if you have elected to use a letter of credit, we will need that on file prior to execution. But if you have elected to use the performance bond option, which I know we had a couple webinars on a couple months ago, you have 60 days to obtain that performance bond prior to after you execute your subaward agreement. I know there was some concern of, well, I can't obtain a bond if I don't have an executed subaward. So NTIA has amended their waiver to accommodate that. And I do have those references we can drop in the chat, Jake, if you don't mind. So I think just wanted you guys to be aware. So the letter of credit has to be in tandem with the subaward agreement prior to execution, and we need to have that on file if that's the route you decide to take in order to get your reimbursement. If you decide to take performance bond, you have 60 days after you execute your subaward to get that bond in hand, and then we will need both of those documents in order to get your milestone reimbursement for subaward execution. Any questions regarding that? Jake dropped 2 files. One is the FAQs, and I believe, just to point you to the very specific one itself, it should be FAQ 8.5 for performance bond, if you guys want to give that a look. And then the other one is the actual letter of credit waiver itself on NTIA's website, if you want to give it a look as well. And it has all the information we've talked about in previous webinars regarding those 2 paths. So let us know if you have any questions about those. Any questions about how to get your first milestone reimbursements for subaward execution at this time? Besides actually how to like submit it and stuff in the portal. Awesome. So those are the things kind of like domino effect once we start going. Just wanted you guys to be aware of what's immediately following that, stuff that, you know, we're all excited about. After that, of course, NEPA is a big topic. And like I said, we'll have a different discussion about that. But one thing I wanted you guys to be aware of, and we have gotten a couple questions about already. And so we're, like I said, we're gonna make a little webinar series, make sure everybody's up to speed on everything that's going to be required of you guys. So we're all on the same team, making sure that everything's flowing smoothly. But we have gotten a few questions about our quarterly desk review process and what that is going to look like. So we're going to dedicate some time to walking you guys through everything that's going to be required for quarterly desk reviews. Tiffany, like you asked about reporting, that'll kind of layer in the reporting requirements and that cadence as well, making sure that you guys are fully aware of everything that's going to need to be reported and documents to be provided, information and what have you. So once you do execute your subaward, following that, you'll be put on a quarterly desk review schedule for your entity. And so it won't be on the project basis. All projects within your entity will follow the same quarterly desk review cadence, but they're going to be kind of staggered. We know executed subawards will happen at different points, so everybody won't be on the same one. But that is the time that our team will take to do kind of like a project check-in. We'll do a sampling of expenses incurred to date for the program. We'll look at kind of progress as a whole of how the project is progressing, if there's any hiccups or on a permitting standpoint or anything like that. We'll do some BABA compliance checks, which I know some people have some questions on. We'll do an additional info webinar about that as well. So once you get on that quarterly desk review cadence, it'll stay that way throughout the period of performance. So whenever that time comes for your entity, we will make sure that you have ample time though before we start reviewing documents to gather your information, make sure that you have the requests ahead of time so that you're not just door knocking one day, we come up at you and say we need X, Y, and Z. You're going to have plenty of time to make sure that we have the right things in hand before we start looking into them. So that's kind of the last thing that I was going to mention today that's going to immediately start kind of after you execute your subawards. Just wanted you guys to be aware of how that is going to be a thing, and then we'll kind of go into it in the future of the specifics of how those are going to operate. Any questions about what that process may or may not look like at this time? Awesome. Angel KB, anything we need to add or any other questions we have while folks sit and think.
I don't have anything and I don't see any questions in the chat right now.
Okay. The other thing I was going to mention, well, go ahead, Kibby. Did you have something? Maybe not. Maybe not. The only other thing I was going to mention is that we're contemplating next week, if everybody was still available at this time, to kind of go through the milestone schedule itself again, talk through what might be required for each of those, kind of like I did for subaward execution today, just making sure as y'all contemplate getting these projects kicked off, what is allowed for each milestone, what's not allowed, documentation we'll need along the way, and that kind of thing. So that is contemplated for a webinar next week. So if you have any questions regarding that and want to send it to the BEAD line, msbead@beam.ms.gov, before we get there, it'd be nice to have those questions ahead of time. Any other questions about anything we talked about today or something we need to take back and consider?